If you haven't already, please take a look at the worksheet that is attached to this lecture. It covers the concepts of joins and normalization, which explains why we need joins to begin with. So before you even continue on with this lesson, I recommend taking a few minutes to read over that worksheet and try to understand the concepts that are going on. At the end of the join lessons, we're going to have some examples that relate to some of the things we talked about in that worksheet, specifically relating to the book, author, publisher, database, mini database we create in that normalization worksheet. So please be sure to take a look at that. So in general, a join is a method that allows us to return columns from different tables in the same query. For example, let's take a look at this human resources.employee table. You'll notice the first name and last name column is not included in this table. So the employee's first name and last name is contained in some other table. Using a join will allow us to return the first name and last name that's contained in that other table, along with, say, their ID number, what looks like their social security number, and their job title, other columns that are contained within this particular human resources.employee table. So joins are going to allow us to return columns from different tables in the same result set. There are 4 types of joins that we're going to talk about: the inner join, the left outer join, the right outer join, and the full outer join. And the first is the inner join. If we look at this document here, or if you're looking at the join and normalization worksheet attached to this lecture, you'll see this Venn diagram. This Venn diagram represents the inner join. So what an inner join is essentially, you can think of it as the intersection of 2 sets or 2 tables. So suppose table A stores our customer information, and table B stores our employees. And let's say that the unique column for each of those is the social security number. If I wanted to return information from both tables, maybe their last purchase date from the customer side and their start date from the employee side, so let's say the customer start date is over here, the employee hire date's over here, and I want to find that information and I want to return it in a single query or in a single result set for only those individuals that are both a customer and an employee. To do that, I would use an inner join, because the inner join is an intersection of 2 sets. Or, in our practical example, the inner join would only return those rows where the social security number for that particular individual was in both this customer's table and the employee table. So let's just take a look at a quick example. There's this table, production.product. And in the table, there's a column called product subcategory ID. Immediately you'll notice that some rows have a null value, or in other words, there's no subcategory ID for that product. But then there are many products or rows that do have a product subcategory ID. There's also a table called production.product subcategory that has this product subcategory ID and the name of that particular subcategory. So now suppose I wanted to return for each product, I want the product's name, the product's number, and then I want the product's subcategory name, which is stored in this production.product subcategory table. How would I write that code? Well, first, let's go to production.product. And what you'll see me do a lot is I'm going to put a space and just type P. What I just created is called a table alias. And it's very similar to a column alias, except we can use table aliases to limit the amount of writing we have to do, and it makes things a little bit easier. And you'll see why in just a minute. So let's call this production.product table P. I said I wanted to return the name of the product and the product number, along with the product subcategory. But the name and the product number of the product are the only columns that we're looking for that are actually included in this production.product table. So I want to say select p.name, p.product number. Okay, and when I execute that, all we've done with this p dot in front of the columns is to say return the name column from the table production.product, and then return the product number column from the table production.product. When we complete this join, you'll see why it's really important to have that table alias in your code. So we said that the subcategory for each product is contained in the production.product subcategory table. Suppose that I want to find the name, the product number, and that subcategory name for only those rows that are associated with the product subcategory. Or in other words, only those rows where the product subcategory ID value is not null and the product subcategory ID value exists in the production.product subcategory table. To do that, I'm going to write inner join. You notice that turns gray. That's a good thing. Inner join, and this is where we say I'm going to join, what type of join? An inner join to what table? And I'm going to say production.product subcategory. I want to join to this table, production.product subcategory, and I'm going to call it PS. So I put a space and then PS. This next line, I'm going to say on. So this on line now tells SQL how we're going to complete that join. We talked about it when we first looked at the production.product table. We're going to join on the product subcategory ID column from the production.product table to each time it matches to a row or a particular product subcategory ID in the production.product subcategory table. So I said I also wanted to return the subcategory name. In the production.product subcategory table, there is a column called name that has the product subcategory name. The problem is there's also a name column in production.product. So if I just type name, I'm going to get an error here, and it's going to say ambiguous column. This is SQL's way of saying, hey, this query recognizes that there are two tables with a name column, or at least two tables with a name column. Which table do you want me to pull the information from? So over here we specified pull the name column from P, or production.product. Now I want to say pull the name column from PS, or production.product subcategory. Let's give this the alias product subcategory name. Now when I run this code, I get the product name, the product number, and the product subcategory name. What SQL's done is said every time I see 14 in the product subcategory ID, go to this production.product subcategory table. If there's a value of 14 in the product subcategory ID column, return the name. And that's what we're doing with the join. We're going to explain this much more in the coming lessons with many more examples to help reinforce the concepts that we're going to talk about.